It's Final Friday.
Eric, I asked you for someone who makes you laugh, and I am right there with you on this pick. You said Terrible Maps, who is at Terrible Maps on Twitter and at Terrible Map, singular, on Instagram. This one is also pretty self-explanatory, but first, you mentioned in your email that you love, quote-unquote, legit Instagram maps. So let's start with that. Like, why is that? Would you call yourself a map head?
No, definitely not. But I enjoy, in terms of things that I follow on Instagram, I always enjoy these map stuff of like, this is the, this is the size the Roman Empire actually was, and they'll paint in red,
Right.
from all over North Africa and Europe, and you're like, oh, that is fascinating. Or, how big something is compared to something else. And there's a lot of these very legit map sites that I find super interesting. And, or another one I love, which comes up a lot, is most common, language spoken other than Spanish, sort of other than Spanish or English. Mm-hmm. And, it's fascinating, and I'll zoom in, and it really gives you a sense of which state have the biggest population of which type of immigrants, came to this state. And you're like, oh, that's so fascinating. So apparently we have a huge Indian population, bigger than any other, ethnic minority. Like, that's so interesting. I don't know, just things like that I find really interesting. And so this is a little bit similar to your pal James, where this is actually a parody of those. So like one of the maps is most common language spoken other than Spanish by state, and the entire US is just blue and it says English. or another one I did one recently, every US state with the first letter missing, which was like weirdly
like California, North Dakota, New York.
Top 12 states to live in, and they're just all the states that border Canada. I don't know. It's just or a good example of a legitimate one. Sorry, I just remembered another legitimate one is they'll show like the population of Los Angeles if spread across the United States, what it would be. So you see like LA in this tiny little condensed red dot, and then you see this enormous red blotch. That kind of stuff makes you think.
Right.
But then they'll do a parody of that, like, or a lot of times they'll say, look, there'll be a legit map site. We'll say, look how huge Australia is compared to whatever, and they'll superimpose Australia into other continents. And so they did when there was like America is huge compared to other continents, and they shrunk down all the continents of the world, including North America, and put them all inside the United States.
Oh my God.
It just makes me laugh every single time. And also, I think it's so deadpan. Another one I saw was Danger presented by Indiana. And so Indiana is red, and all the states around Indiana are orange. It says invasion anytime. And then after that, it's the next ring is you are not safe. And then there's like, the yellow ring, I think, is time enough to hug your loved ones. And then like the East and West Coast, it's in gray, and it just says illusion of safety. Like the absurd, like it's so absurdist. It just makes me laugh every time, especially when I follow all these other legit sites, and when it pops up in the middle of a bunch of other legit map sites, it just really cracks me up.
Oh, that's interesting because if you're following other legit maps accounts and you're not expecting a fake map, a terrible map to pop up, it'll catch you off guard. That's a good point. Yeah,
it's like in Doctor Who, Peter Capaldi always made me laugh more than any other doctor because I never expected him to say anything funny.
Right,
and so when he did, I would just burst out laughing.
Well, there's a headline from The Onion from several years ago that I love. Grown man refers to map at beginning of novel to find out where ruined castle of Arnoth is located. And I think many years ago, you did an episode of Imaginary Worlds all about fantasy maps, right?
I did, yeah, that's true.
So to talk about that, like, what's something about the way we use maps in fiction, or otherwise, if there's something else you've gleaned from the accounts that you follow, what's something that you think most people don't know about maps that's interesting to you?
I think the hardest thing with a lot of fantasy maps is that Middle Earth and Westeros are pretty obviously based on England and maybe England's relationship to other countries.
Right.
And there's something kind of a little easy about that. And I think it's really hard to come up with maps that don't fit, something that's already pretty familiar. I find that kind of a little bit difficult to grasp. Or sorry, that's a really good question. I feel bad I don't have a really good answer to that. Yeah, I did that episode like 5 years ago.
Yeah. One more terrible map before we go, which is it's a picture of Finland with an F inside of it, and it says Finland. And it's a picture of Finland with an F outside of it, and it says Foutland. Oh my God! Just what a brilliant account. That was Terrible Maps, who is at Terrible Map on Instagram.